All right, can you all hear me good? How you doing? It's a little bit like a buffet, right? Because you get like fed all these different meals from all these different dietary traditions, and then at the end of the day, you got to figure out what you're supposed to eat, right? Not so easy. What? Yeah, here we go. So, and I think what you'll find about Ayurvedic medicine is it kind of glues it all together. It's the science of life, right? So it's about how to live your life in harmony with these really natural cycles. I mean, birds fly south, whales migrate. Everything in nature is really connected to these cycles, right? So we are too. And I want to talk about how we can connect and maybe how we don't connect to these cycles, which is really important, I think. The thing that I wanted to start by saying, the thing that really got me excited about Ayurvedic medicine in the beginning was that it wasn't just about the body, that it was a system of medicine that really understood everything, particularly the mind. And it's this crazy mind of ours, really, that gets us into trouble. You know, the mind is something that drives us into exhaustion and beats away at the physical body and creates a level of physical density where the body becomes dense. And the whole point of Ayurvedic medicine, remember, Ayurveda means, Ayur means life and Veda means truth. So the whole point of Ayurveda is to get the truth out of your life. That's what Ayurveda is about. So the whole point of Ayurveda really is to remove the physical density of your body, make it function good, make your digestion function good, and then have the clarity mentally so you can see what your crazy mind has created for you, evaluate it, whether it's working or serving you today maybe it did as a child when you were 3, 5, and 10. Some of these patterns of behavior you created to feel safe and secure, they worked when you were 3, 5, and 10. But are they still working today? Or am I remotely making the same dumb decisions, doing the same dumb stuff over and over and over again in my life? Is that what I'm doing? That makes sense? When people come to our clinic in Boulder, I mean, we're always looking at how this crazy mind created patterns to feel safe and secure that impact how we think and function as an adult. And do you think that has an impact on how it bangs away at your physical body? Yeah. Absolutely. There's an old saying I want you to remember that I love. It's my favorite these days. And it's that to the extent that something affects you is to the extent that it's your karma. That's the saying. I am not a big fan of like karma, bad karma, you know, suck it up. You know, what are you going to do, right? It's just your bad karma. I don't like that. Karma means action. So reset, to the extent something affects you, it means it's your opportunity to take transformational action and free yourself from being a version of yourself that you don't even like. You become another person that you don't even like. How many of you feel like you become another person? That you're projecting on the screen a version of yourself that you don't even like. How many of you love your husband or your spouse or your partner? How many of you hold back loving your husband, spouse, or partner? How many sometimes say to yourself, boy, if my husband or my wife or my spouse or my partner would do a little bit more of this or a little less of that, I would love them so much more. How many say that? So why do you wait for them to change so then you can be your happy, wonderful, go-lucky self? Why do we have to wait for them to change? Because guess what? They may never change. And you never get to be your wonderful, happy, go-lucky, loving self. You get to be this version of yourself you don't even like. Right? That make sense? So I had a patient, she came to our clinic to do these Ayurvedic treatments, and it's a retreat. You do these two and a half hours of Ayurvedic massage, and you do 3 to 5 hours of yoga, breathing, and meditation, these Ayurvedic self-inquiry, psychological exercises, and you just disarm your protective nervous system. And she came in and she said, my husband smokes pot every day for the last 10 years. My house is a disaster. There's trash everywhere, garbage everywhere. The lawn is never mowed. The sprinklers are broken. The rock walls are falling. The fields aren't mowed. It's a disaster. And I said, do you love this guy? And she said, yeah, I love him. Yeah, I love him. And I said, then if you really love him, I'm curious to know what it is you love about this guy. I said, why don't you write him a love letter for me and tell me everything you love. You make a list of all the things you love about him. Don't give it to him, just write it. And when you write the letter, ask yourself, how does it make you feel to write that letter when you're writing it? How do you feel writing it? She did it, came back the next day, and I said, so how did it go? And she goes, it was very hard. I'm so used to screaming at him to clean the house and fix this, and he doesn't stop smoking pot and get a life and get a job. I take the kids to school. I pick them up. I make all the money. He does nothing. Well, I'm like, wow. I said, so how did it feel when you finally got to writing this letter? And she said, it felt really good. It felt really nice to just feel the love that I have for him. I said, so what you're telling me is that you spent 10 years yelling and screaming at this guy to change. You decide to go underneath that, write a love letter about the truth of the relationship, that you love him, right? And you did that. You felt great. Everything you've been waiting for him to fix the house and get the yard cleaned up and do all this stuff, then you could be happy. You got that writing a letter in about a half an hour. He had nothing to do with it. And she goes, yeah. I said, so let's make this letter a template of the truth of the relationship. Let's take it into action. I can't have you screaming and yelling, because she was local. She'd go always back and forth during her treatments. I said, I can't have you screaming and yelling during these treatments. So every time you go home, I want you to look at your letter before you go in the house or drive in your disgusting, trash-ridden driveway. And I said, when you're going down the driveway, you look at your temple of the truth and then begin to act on those things that are true about the relationship, things that you love. She goes, oh my God, really? I said, yeah, what do you have to lose, right? Just go and just love them. Just hug them and tell them you love them. Forget about the trash and don't look at the sprinklers and the walls and everything. And she did it. True story. 4 days later, she came back in my office. She sat down and she said, John. I said, what? She goes, it's a miracle. I drove home last night and the fields were mowed. The rock walls repaired, sprinklers working, dogs fixed, trash picked up. I haven't seen my house look that immaculate in 10 years. And I said, really? She said, unbelievable. I said, how did you feel loving him in these last 4 days, not yelling and screaming? Because, it was so nice not to yell and scream. It was just like, it felt really good. I said, how do you think he felt being loved by you? And she said, I don't know. Good enough to clean the house? I don't know. I said, I think he felt safe. Safe, he wasn't going to get yelled at. He didn't need to smoke pot and hibernate. He was willing to take a risk to let the delicate petals of his flower open and let a more true, real version of himself out. And when he let that version of himself out and you let that loving version of yourself out, we had a communion based on true love. Not you loving him because he's going to love you back. You didn't expect him to actually do any of that, clean the house, fix the yard. None of that was expected. You just loved him because you loved loving him. That's why you wrote the letter, because it made you feel good to write the letter and love him, right? We feel good when we love, not when we get love. We think we want to get love, but we really feel good when we actually give the love. And that's what you felt. You felt wonderful and expanded like the sun, giving your light and your love to your husband. He felt the warmth of your sunlight, his petals open, and you had a communion based on true love. It's an eternal, amazing relationship based on truth. And when he now turns to his kids, instead of being the pot-smoking dad who doesn't feel good about himself, right? He gives himself fully to his kids, and the kids feel safe in dad's true love. They feel safe enough to open up the petals of their flower, and they feel safe enough to be themselves in their world with their kids instead of being affected by peer pressure and things like that, right? So now they're willing to take a delicate version of themselves out into the world and be who they truly are. Ayurveda, the truth of their life is expressed. You with me? And then those kids give it to their kids, and guess what we do? Solely by us taking a risk to take action, transformational action, that's what karma is, to take action, to act on the truth of your relationship, which is your nature is to be like the sun, to shine your light. And when you do that, you change the world, one relationship at a time. I really believe that. That's how we do it. I had one guy, one guy came to me and he goes, so you want me to love my mother, right? And I said, yeah, why don't you love her? He goes, well, if I love her, she'll move in with me. So I can't love her. I got to push her away. I got to just push her away. And I said, maybe your mom feels that you're not loving her, and she just wants to be loved by you. And the more that you don't love her, the more she clings and claws, try to get your love. So it feels like she wants to move in with you, but she just wants to feel your love. I said, what if you just gave yourself fully and loved her? Maybe she'd feel safe in your sunlight. She'd let a delicate version of herself out, and she'd be able to communicate with you directly, heart to heart, and have a love that's based on true love, not based on the need to live with you. And he goes, you don't know my mother. You got my point? Ayurveda, see what happens is, though, we're so dense, our bodies are so heavy, that we don't have the clarity to know what to do. That's why Ayurveda was invented. That's why it's here. It was a system of medicine to get the body functioning well, so then we could have the clarity to get on the path of making spiritual progress, growth in our life, to be happy, content in your life, to live a life that's based on love versus control and constriction and being mean and resentful to other people because they're not the way I think they should be. Isn't that a beautiful science? It's hard to argue with that, right? So 95% of the serotonin in our body is produced in our gut. So all the stress that we have because we had to morph ourselves into a version of ourselves that's protective as a child, all that stress we endured as kids, every time we got hurt feelings, every time someone took away a toy, every time we got disappointed at Christmas time or birthday present time, every time we got hurt feelings, guess where we process that? Our gut. And Ayurveda has been saying for thousands of years that the intestinal tract is where we store and source our nervous system. That the nervous system is stored here. And that was like always, like I kind of got that for years, like, yeah, I get it. It's kind of like the anchor, the ballast of the ship, keeps everything on track. I would kind of hallucinate a little bit to make that understandable for years. Then when I found this research that's recently been done, and they found that only 5% of your serotonin is in your brain at any given time, only 5%, the rest of it's in your gut. Your gut manufactures the serotonin and other neurotransmitters to help you cope with stress, be happy, deal with situations. It stores it and it delivers it. It's all about your gut. So in Ayurveda, we're all about the gut. We're all about how well you digest. So one of the first rules about making sure you digest good is you can't avoid hard to digest stuff and call it a day. In other words, if you say, well, I don't eat wheat because it's bad for you. I don't eat dairy because it's bad for you. I don't eat greasy fried food because it's bad for you. I don't eat soy and hard to digest nuts and whatever, things that we know that are hard to digest. And you avoid all those foods and then I feel good, have we finished the job? How many of us avoid wheat and dairy because we know it's bad for you? I mean, in Boulder, Colorado, right? You can't find gluten anymore. Matter of fact, you get ticketed if you eat something. If you're caught eating like a gluten-rich bread or something like that, you get a ticket. They cite you. So you're eating gluten without a license and inside the city limits. Not allowed to eat gluten in Boulder. It's Boulder, right? We're healthy in Boulder. But it's really crazy. They suck out all the nutrition out of this bread and they give you this gluten-free cardboard and this is healthy for you. I don't think so. I think what Sally Fallon was talking about was so right on. I think that when you look at Ayurvedic tradition and eating fats and things, in traditional cultures weren't afraid of that. And I think there's a lot of similarities. The organ meat thing, have a hard time with that one, personally, to eat that. Now, I'm not saying it's not right. I just don't like to swallow it. But I think there's a lot of similarities, and she's brilliant, and I think there's a lot. When you look at traditional systems and cultures, it's gonna present a level of logic, and that's what Ayurveda, I think, presents. How many of you don't go to the bathroom? Good. How many of you have to take some herbal laxative or some herbal this, or eat a lot of vegetables, or do this or that, the other thing to go good? How many of us? Okay, now it's to be. I ask my patients, go, how do you digest your food? And they go, how's your elimination? And they go, fine. It's all fine. It's good. It's fine. I said, fine means freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So fine is really not a good enough answer. How is your elimination? Do you need to do anything to make yourself go on a regular basis? Well, yeah, if I don't take my fiber, if I don't take my herbal laxatives, I don't eat this, my magnesium, I don't stand up on my head for like 30 minutes before I wake up. I mean, just crazy stuff people do to go. I have one patient, bless her heart, I swear to God, true story, she's a good friend of mine. She won't go unless she sits in front of her computer for 20 minutes. I haven't figured it out yet. We're working on it. Doesn't matter what she's searching on the web. Doesn't matter if she's checking emails or looking at, Casper the Ghost videos. Doesn't matter. But all she needs to do is sit in front of her computer for 20 minutes. She gets to go to the bathroom. Other than that, she's flat out constipated. I'm not kidding. I couldn't make that up. So, what does that mean? For us to be satisfied with our digestion, I'm not saying you should eat wheat or should eat greasy fried food, but I'm saying if you can't eat those and you have symptoms, that is your body telling us that something's wrong. If I don't eliminate good, something's wrong. Something's not right. So choose the diet that you want because it's healthy for you. That's all fine. We'll talk about that. But more importantly, can you digest the hard to digest stuff? So let's take a little journey through the digestive system. Does that sound good? Yes. And let's see if we can troubleshoot it for ourselves and see how we're doing, all right? So in your intestinal tract, you have these little villi, right? These little finger-like projections. And they're supposed to be happy and free and doing their thing, right? But then we have stress. Oh my God, all this stress and this worry and bad stuff's happening. And the intestinal tract goes, ugh. And it contracts, and the intestinal wall dries out, and now you get constipated. Even as a kid, you get constipated. So you take things to get you to go, right? And those things that get you to go irritate the intestinal wall, like senna tea and laxatives, and magnesium sucks the water off your gut. We think it's such a great thing to take, but really it's a dehydrating agent that sucks water, gets water in the stool, and you go good. Eventually it can suck the minerals and the water off your gut wall, end up dehydrating you, making your intestinal tract even more dry and even more constipated, driving this thing even more chronic into your body. So that's not long-term the best solution, is it? All these herbal laxatives are oftentimes irritants. They irritate the bowel. The bowel goes, whoa, it contracts, and then desensitizes itself to those irritants. So when the food comes in, the body goes, I don't even feel it. I am so numb from all those irritants. I don't feel anything. I am just numb to the world, right? So that's not a good plan either, is it? So what happens is the intestinal tract produces reactive mucus, and the reactive mucus lines your gut. Makes your stools a little bit loose. So maybe you started out constipated, now you have looser stools and you think you solved your problem. Or when you went from dry and you're somewhere in the middle and everything's going good, and in 5 years you get loose stools. Or you actually ever see mucus in your stool. How many of you actually see? You don't have to answer that. But you're not allowed to ever see mucus in your stool. Right? If you do, email me. Got to fix that. Not allowed to do that. Because that means we know for a fact your villi are flattened out in that mucus. And that means your ability to absorb nutrition, fats, essential fatty acids, minerals, vitamins, all that's going to be compromised. And what's worse is your ability to absorb fat or toxins, chemicals, heavy metals, environmental pollutants, those things that are fat soluble have to be absorbed through your intestinal wall into your lymphatic system. It's your your lymph system surrounds your intestinal tract. So here's your intestinal tract, right? On the outside of your intestinal tract is all this lymph. It's called gut-associated lymphatic tissue. It's where 80% of our immune system lies. 80%, it's right there. So any weird thing gets through my digestive system, it gets through my intestinal wall, my lymph system's ready to hammer it with white blood cells. It's a really cool idea. So wherever you have skin, this skin, my digestive intestinal wall is skin, epithelium. My respiratory tract is lined with skin, epithelium. My arteries are lined with skin. My heart's lined with skin. It's all the same stuff. Wherever you have skin in your body, which is a lot of places, you have right underneath it an associated lymphatic tissue. So your immune system is ready to pounce. If anything weird gets through my skin, there's a thing called the skin-associated lymphatic tissue, or SALT, that's ready to deal with anything that gets through. I have respiratory lymphatic tissue, mucous membrane lymphatic tissue. I've got gut-associated lymph. I have salts, alts, malts, all these alts. Really important that system is functioning well for us. Now, in Ayurvedic medicine, the lymph system is the first system that we evaluate, because it's the drains in your body. Your lymph system, if something weird gets through your digestive system, it goes through your gut and ends up in between the cells, the lymphatic system's job is to suck all that weird stuff out between your cells. One of my teachers called it sand between a bag of oranges. So remember this visual, right? You have a bag of oranges, one of those net bags, right? And there's all sand in between. The oranges are your cells. And all the sand in between those cells is your congested lymphatic system. And if you have a congested lymphatic system, guess what you're going to feel? Tired, sluggish, exhausted. Skin will be an exit ramp for those impurities. You might get rashes or acne or eczema or psoriasis. You'll have your wrists, your fingers, your rings might get tight on your fingers. Ankles may swell. Hold on to more water. Bloat around your belly. Allergies, sinuses, sore throat, swollen glands, headaches. Joints, the body will dump the junk, the toxins into your joints. Your joints will become stiff and achy. First thing in the morning when you wake up, you hardly can move because my lymph is so congested because it's been sitting there still all night, and I wake up feeling stiff. How many feel that? That's your lymph system. It's not draining well. Because your digestive system somehow isn't functioning optimally. We want it to be optimal, like an 18-year-old. Is the kind of digestion we want, and we can all get that. I do not believe for 1 second that because we are older, we can't digest good. I feel like my goal personally with my patients is to get them to digest like an 18-year-old. I don't believe we should do anything less than that. Women who menstruate and they swell, their breasts swell or become tender. The lymphatic system drains the reproductive system. So if your lymph system is congested and you menstruate, when you menstruate, your body's pushing fluid into every detox system you have, including your lymph, your liver, your intestinal tract, your skin, your joints, and your lymph. And when that lymph is congested and it can't process and your immune system is stuck in traffic, your breast may swell, become tender. That's a classic indication that your lymph system is congested. It's not normal. Neither are any of the conditions I just mentioned. How many of you have something that I just mentioned on that list? Most of us have drains that aren't working good. We go to the doctor, and the doctor says, we checked your blood, and your cholesterol levels are high, Mrs. Jones, and therefore we need to give you an agent to lower your cholesterol, and then you should be better. Better because your blood shows you have less cholesterol. Not better because you feel any better. I've never had anybody come in and say, my cholesterol is lower and I feel great. They don't ever feel a difference. But in Ayurveda, we say, Mrs. Jones, your cholesterol levels might be getting a little bit high, but maybe it's your drains are clogged. Maybe that's causing your blood pressure, right? Pressure, if they can't get rid of the waste out, would you think the pressure might go up on the other side, maybe? Your body's going to push toxins into other places, like your joints, your skin, your allergies, create hypersensitivity reactions, because you can't get the waste out. And where did it start? When you stopped being able to eat wheat and dairy. We bloated when you had fried food. I know we should never touch fried food, but if you did eat it, do you think we should be able to digest it? What do you think? I mean, if you had it, you should be able to digest. I'm not saying we should have it every day, right? But you should be able to, don't you think? But if you eat it and you feel nauseous or bloated or it just sits there for hours, then what does that mean? We got problems, what it means, okay? So, here we go. Ready? Your intestinal tract is irritated. It's not absorbing the nutrients, nor is it absorbing the toxins, so the lymph system can prepare these toxins for proper disposal, right? Those toxins, if the lymph system is congested or you have constipation or loose stools or diarrhea or anything like that, they get redirected back to your liver. And your liver goes, really, guys? I just shipped you into the intestinal tract to be processed through the lymph just yesterday, and now you're back? I'm like so done with this. I'm so busy, can't handle it. The liver puts it back into the blood. And the blood starts looking for places to put these fat-soluble chemicals, toxins, heavy metals, environmental pollutants, pesticides, preservatives, all these heavy fat-soluble, which are very hard to get rid of, toxins. And then the bloodstream dumps it into your fat cells. But the fat cells it's like a hotel. There's a limited number of rooms that you can store them in. And once they get filled up, and the skinnier your constitution is, right, the more hypersensitive you are to these toxins. So when you overwhelm those fat cells and they can't take any more, then the body has to look for new dumping grounds for these toxins. And one of the more common places is your brain tissue. So now they're finding heavy metals in people's brain tissue. And that affects cognitive function, memory, and stroke. Issues that may not happen to your 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. We're talking about Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all these neurological conditions may be due to a digestive system that went south 20, 30 years ago when you started getting bloated, when you started eating wheat or dairy. I had one guy, his belly was out to here, hard, like just, big guy with a big belly out to here. And I said, how's your digestion? He said, fine. I said, really? I said, I don't think it's fine. I can't imagine you could be that. And he goes, you can set your clock by it. And I was like, really? He had one of those Ayurvedic constitutions that had a little, we call it pitta, a little fire. I was like, really? So I said, so you're telling me that you have perfect bowel movements? Yep. And you can digest anything? Yep. I said, I'm telling you, I guarantee you that all this is not fine digestion. There's something wrong. You got a great constitution, you're able to handle it, act like nothing's happening, but this is unacceptable. This is going to take you out. You have inflammation in your gut, and that's what takes us out as we get into our 50s and 60s is inflammation, right? We've all heard that word. And that happens inside your intestinal tract, and that's where we got to start fixing it. So what happens is your liver, when it gets all these toxins, dumps it into your bloodstream. Your liver becomes congested. Your bile becomes thicker and more viscous. It literally becomes sludgy. And then the bile ducts that take the bile into your small intestine become sludgy. The pancreatic duct dumps into the small intestine. They use the same tube. So if you get all sludgy in your bile ducts, guess what your pancreatic ducts are like? Sludgy too. So now you affected your ability to metabolize fats and blood sugar and digest other foods like proteins and carbs. The whole digestive system becomes weaker. Now your stomach produces acid, right? And the acid gets dumped into your small intestine. And your liver and your pancreatic ducts are supposed to pump a lot of enzymes and bile to neutralize that acid, right? But what if you don't have that much bile flow because it's viscous and congested and sludgy? Your pancreatic ducts are congested. You're not producing that bile flow. What happens to the stomach acid? The stomach will not dump that acid into your small intestine unless there's adequate bile flow. So no bile flow means, oh, if I eat greasy fried food, I feel really sick and nauseous and I feel yucky. It just sits there. I don't feel very good. Anybody have that? I avoid fatty food. I don't eat any fatty food. Number one cause of gallbladder disease in America is a low-fat diet. Because the gallbladder never gets functional. We don't actually use it anymore. We've been told, the fat's bad for us. So we avoid all fats except for some good ones. We have them in minimal amounts. It's not great. The bile gets sludgy. And one study showed that 46% of the people with pancreatitis had thick, sluggish, viscous bile. So the gallbladder will affect your blood sugar. And some researchers really feel that that congested bile will ooze back up the pancreatic duct, cause the pancreatitis, and predispose to us to blood sugar issues and potentially, possibly, diabetes. You got to make sure you can metabolize those fats, because guess what? In America, there are these things called coal mine plumes, clouds that cover all of America that dump mercury on everything, everything. Fish, if you eat fish, there was a recent report that showed out of 184 fish sampled from grocery stores and sushi bars, every one of them had toxic mercury levels. 20% of the mercury, 20% of the sushi, and 20% of the tuna at a sushi bar, all of them had legal action levels of mercury, 20%. The organic spinach you're eating has mercury on it from the coal mine plumes. Thank you very much for that. Didn't ask for that. But if you don't have a good digestive system and a good detox process, that's going to store in your fat cells, possibly your brain, cause all kinds of problems. If your digestion is doing really well, you got a fighting chance to maintain normal function with an environment that's very toxic and very polluted. You all with me? So if your bile is not flowing, yeah, I can just not eat the fatty food, but you can't do anything about the toxic world we live in. That's really important. And that may be the number one reason. It's another reason why I'm I'm not really fanatic, but I'm really into making my digestion and detox system strong. I'm really into it. Because I see the benefits of myself and my patients, and it's exciting. It's exciting to watch your digestion as you're getting older get better and better and better, as opposed to feeling more tired and more sluggish. And I don't like that, okay? So when the bile is not flowing, the stomach acid can't be produced. No acid, you can't break down your gluten and your dairy, because gluten is a hard-to-digest protein. Dairy has casein, a hard-to-digest protein. We aren't really wired to digest casein that well unless you've got a really good digestive fire. So the digestive fire in your stomach has to be very strong. And a lot of us say, well, just take hydrochloric acid, you'll be fine. No, the reason the body turned the fire off was because something downstream wasn't working good. Are you with me? You guys get this, how important this is? This is like so important. Because if you just take something to take my digestive enzymes, right? What's that about? All we do then is just take enzymes that help me digest the food for me. I never help my body digest the food on its own. I can make those enzymes. But my bile duct's all congested, so my enzymes can't get where they need to go, right? So let's clean out those bile ducts. Let's turn on the digestive fire. Let's clean the intestinal tract, get the lymph system moving, and get on with business. Well, guess what? Nature does this for us. Isn't it cool? Nature does this for us automatically in the things that are harvested. I listened to Sally talk about the acid-alkaline thing, right? So it's not a good idea or a bad idea. It's nature. Nature figured this one out. We just have to observe. We're going into the winter, right? Winter is cold and dry. What do the squirrels eat? Nuts, right? Nuts are a very acidic food. High in protein, high in fat, very acidic. The more acidic the food, the more it penetrates, the more it drives, the more it nourishes. The more alkaline the food, what? The more it cleanses. The lymph system functions well in an alkaline environment. So if you go overly acidic, and most of our overly acidic are yucky, hard to digest comfort foods, by the way. But when you become overly acidic, the lymph system doesn't drain very well. So nature in the winter said, we're going in the wintertime, it's going to be cold, it's going to be dry. So here's a harvest of nuts and grains and soups and stews loaded with fats and proteins and essential fatty acids. Very acidic to penetrate and store and insulate you for the cold winter months so you don't get cold and freeze to death. Now, if a squirrel ate broccoli in the winter, they'd freeze to death. And they're just as dumb as we are because we eat broccoli in the winter too. Thank God they don't have access to broccoli in the winter. We do. Right? So in the wintertime, if there was one season, that was what? A time to eat acidic foods, it would be winter. To insulate, to store, to drive. The beef, really, is the most acidic of all the meats. So it rejuvenates people who are protein deficient. I'm not saying you should eat meat. I'm just saying that some people have gotten themselves so depleted by not eating meat and not getting proper proteins in the wintertime that the body will suck all the protein out of the joints, and your joints will begin to ache and become stiff and rigid. You'll start to crave emergency fuel like sugar and jelly beans. And you'll have little stashes of candy and stuff all around your house because you nibble on these little sweet things to keep your energy up. You're protein deficient if that's you. Stiff in the winter and you got a sugar thing going on. You got a protein problem. Now in Ayurvedic medicine, which is a traditional vegetarian system of medicine, right? They say if you're protein deficient, eat red meat. 4 ounces a day for 2 weeks. Replenish those reserves as a medicine. Not necessarily as a way of life, but as medicine. I've given that to many patients over the years. I have yet to see anything but a miracle. For my vegetarians who have gone south, who just didn't do it good enough. I still believe the vegetarian diet is one of the healthiest diets to be on, but I think it's a very challenging diet in our culture. I think it's very challenging. So the point being, in the winter, get your proteins, get your fats, go more acidic. In the spring, the rules change. After eating all this heavy food in the winter, we go into the spring. Spring is a new season. It's nature's new year. So nature, the first thing that the deer do in the springtime is they scrape the ground, they dig up the surface roots called rhizomes. And those surface roots, they eat them, and what the surface roots do is they clean all the villi in the intestinal tract. We used to have those roots in our diet, burdock root and dandelion, golden seal. We used to throw them in the soups and the stews in the early spring, because that's all we could get after a long winter of nothing, just eating elk jerky and deer jerky and venison, that kind of stuff, all we had, right? Raccoon, ribs, tenders, I don't know. There wasn't a lot to eat, right, in the winter. And it was either eat meat or die. That's how it was. Agreed? 100 years ago in Vermont in January, what did you eat? It wasn't spinach salad, guarantee you that. So we had this extreme acid time of the year where the body was deeply nourished with proteins and fats to the point where it was overwhelmed. And then the body wanted to get rid of that excess. So spring comes to clean all the yucky, heavy stuff off those villi and get them set up with those bitter roots to clean out the villi. And then what happens in nature as the deer eat those bitter roots, the next thing out of the ground as the snow melts and the ground thaws is those green sprouts. That fluorescent green, early spring green, that is loaded with chlorophyll. They nibble into those sprouts, which have 400 times the nutrition that their full-grown plant does, and they fertilize the good bacteria of those villi that were just cleaned out. Isn't that cool? And then the next thing that nature harvests after that is the berries, cherries, all these red strawberries, these things that come in late spring, that are loaded with red paranthocyanins, lymphatic antioxidants. These are the lymph movers. So we go from the bitter roots to clean the villi, the greens to fertilize, and then the berries and cherries to stimulate lymphatic flow so the lymph system can drain. And now the lymph on the outside of the gut wall, the gut-associated lymph, where 80% of your immune system lies, is properly processed. Now we've taken care of that. Isn't that great? Upstream, you have herbs like turmeric to help thin your bile. Turmeric is a rhizome. It's all been processed in early spring, harvested in early spring. Dandelion root, another bitter root for your liver, help get your liver functioning really well. Dandelion, as you probably know, has means in France. Do you know what the word for dandelion is in France? Pissenlit, right? And pissenlit means to pee in the bed. Right? So any French person knows that if you take a lot of dandelion root tea, which is basically a staple in America for hundreds and hundreds of years and all over Europe, that if you drink dandelion root tea before you go to bed, you're going to pee in the bed. Not a good idea, because it's a diuretic, loaded with potassium to replenish the diureses, but perfectly balanced for spring to help clean out the urinary tract and to diurese and help the lymphatic system move and help purge the liver and get it all out of there, right? Interesting. And then some Frenchman came over here and renamed the plant dandelion. I don't know how that guy's figured that out, because it was already named in France. I don't know where part of France this guy came from, because he named it another French name, dandelion, which means nothing except that's what it looks like. But the name was already established in France. A little sketchy history there. But the point is that nature provides these beautiful things for us if we just look carefully. Go to my website at lifespa.com. Go to the library, print out the grocery lists for winter, for summer, and spring. They're in a PDF format. You can print them out, put them in your purse, circle all the foods you like as we go into the winter, circle all the foods that you like, and eat them. They're in season. Let's not make this thing more complicated than it has to be. If you like certain foods, then give yourself permission to eat them. Think about what you can eat more of, and let's stop thinking about what we should not eat. If nature harvested it and it's in season, eat it. Now, if your digestion is wacky and you can't digest wheat or dairy or gluten or certain things, we got to fix your digestion as well, for sure. And that's something that I do. That's something that's why I give you this list to fill out for my newsletters. I've written and done videos about this like insanely. Like, so much information is on the web with my videos and my articles, and I really love, because they're extremely educational about taking you step by step how to reset your digestive system and put it back on track. So if you want more to understand and help to self-help and self-treat yourself, it's all there on my web. Some of you probably have been there and you know. So I think it's a great service. A lot of my patients just love it. They eat it up. So if I'm making sense, read that. I also do phone consultations. People who are having trouble, and we're having difficulty. You need a little bit of support. But the main theme here is that we can do this ourselves if we learn about it. And I think we all need to learn about how to get this digestive system functioning well.